There have been times in American history when the balance of power broke down, when Congress, the courts, or both stepped back, and the president stepped in. But when power consolidates, what happens to democracy? And more importantly, how do we get it back? Today, we're looking at moments when America's checks and balances failed, and how we clawed our way back. Let's start with Abraham Lincoln. In 1861, the Civil War broke out, and Lincoln took bold, often unilateral action. He suspended habeas corpus, allowing the military to detain citizens without trial. He expanded the Army and Navy without congressional approval. And he blockaded southern ports, a move traditionally seen as an act of war. Congress was out of session when war began, and Lincoln justified his actions as necessary to preserve the Union. When Congress returned, instead of rebuking him, they retroactively approved nearly everything. The judiciary was largely silent. One circuit court judge, Justice Taney, no fan of Lincoln, did challenge the suspension of habeas corpus, but the Supreme Court never issued a ruling. This was a moment of immense executive power. But here's what's important. After the war, the power tide receded. Congress reasserted itself, and the Supreme Court later ruled in Ex parte Milligan in 1866 that military trials of civilians were unconstitutional when civilian courts were open. So yes, power was ceded to the executive, but it wasn't permanent. The system bent, but didn't break. Fast forward to the 1930s, the Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt unleashed a wave of executive actions to stabilize the economy. Agencies like the NRA and the AAA had sweeping authority. Critics called it an imperial presidency. The Supreme Court initially pushed back. In 1935, it struck down multiple New Deal programs as unconstitutional. But then came the showdown. FDR's 1937 court packing plan. He proposed adding more justices to the Supreme Court, up to 15, claiming it would ease the workload. But the real aim? Tilt the court in his favor. Congress, even his own party, revolted. The plan failed, but ironically, around the same time, the court began upholding New Deal laws in what's known as the switch in time that saved 9. This wasn't just about courts or Congress caving. It was a power struggle that ended with all branches recalibrating their roles. After September 11, 2001, the executive branch expanded once again. President George W. Bush claimed sweeping powers, surveillance without warrants, detaining suspects indefinitely, and authorizing enhanced interrogation techniques. Congress passed the Patriot Act, granting surveillance powers with little debate, and the judiciary? It was slow to intervene. But over time, things shifted. In Hamden v. Rumsfeld, 2006, the court ruled that military commissions set up without congressional approval were unconstitutional. In Boumediene, 2008, the court said Guantanamo detainees had the right to habeas corpus. It took years, but eventually the system pushed back, reasserting the role of law even in the shadow of fear. So what do we learn from this? In crisis, the executive often acts fast and bold, sometimes too bold, and the other branches, whether out of fear, politics, or pragmatism, can step aside. But history shows us this: the rebalancing almost always comes through the courts, through Congress, through the people. The Constitution doesn't protect itself. It relies on us, on every generation, to keep the balance intact. If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more stories from America's past that still shape our future, and check out my Fourth Turning series to see what happens when the cycle turns again. See you next time.